Hey there, spooky nerds. Aaron Sagers here at the historic Chinese Theater in Hollywood. So we're about to go into a screening of this movie, Late Night with the Devil, but I get a first peek of talking to the directors and writers. We've got Cameron and Colin Cairnes. Cairnes. No, that's Irish. Sorry, I went Irish.
No, we've got Irish roots, so that's good.
Okay, Cairnes.
On it. Yeah.
How do you say it once more?
Cairnes.
Cairnes.
We sort of flatten out the...
Yeah, but that's the Aussie accent.
Yeah.
Cairnes.
It's going to be real bad if I try to do Aussie all night.
Let's just go with the Irish version.
The first thing I want to say is, I really enjoyed this film. Late Night with the Devil, everybody's been talking about it. It's a lot of fun, but it doesn't matter what I think because you got the accolades of Stephen King.
Wow, yes.
The actual quote is, "It is absolutely brilliant. I couldn't take my eyes off it. Your results may vary, as they say, but I urge you to watch it when you can." Where do you go from there?
Well, he's a very wise man, what can we say? Where do we go exactly? When we heard that news, we woke up, I think it was just after South by Southwest last year, and there was a message from Roy Lee, one of our producers who knows Stephen well, saying, you better check Twitter. And we go on, and he's said these wonderful things about our movie. He's a legend. I mean, he basically invented the 70s and 80s as far as we're concerned, the movies we love, the sort of the horror genre in general. So
we can die happy men.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I enjoy that this film has all these elements from 70s occult horror and horror in general, and so you're watching and you're like, there's a smidge of Rosemary's Baby, there's a little bit of The Exorcist, there's dare I say Texas Chainsaw Massacre in the mix as far as the grit of the look a little bit. But what was in the blender? What was going in the blender for you guys?
Yeah, it's funny you meant, all of that. I didn't really think of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but I totally get it. I mean, I think, we were talking about this earlier, just in many ways I think what we've made is a bit of a reaction to all the polished looking stuff that's out there in the horror world in general. Everything just looks amazing these days, and we thought, let's
have really bad production values. But we just it was a bit of a reaction, like, let's make it gritty, as you're saying. I get what you're saying with Texas Chainsaw, but this is it's supposed to be a lost tape of an analog show, 4:3, and you watch stuff back from that period, and it does have a grit to it, an edge to it. So we certainly tried to capture that, but I mean, other influences. I mean,
obviously a lot of that late 70s, early 80s horror stuff, the body horror of Cronenberg, Videodrome, it was really key for us in the writing of it. Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, I think, there's some maybe obvious nods to that in some parts of the film.
And of course the setting, we have the 70s setting, but also the Halloween setting, which works so well for it. Yes. People may have noticed that you have an Australian accent, as we already covered, but I was thinking about American TV that was making its way over to Australia. What were you getting as kids that kind of stuck in your brains and made you think, we want to go back there with this movie? Yeah.
Well, I think back in the day, in the 80s, we weren't getting the American talk shows. We knew who Carson was. He was obviously a world famous star and would pop up in movies and TV shows, but we didn't get his talk show. We didn't get any of them until Letterman. I think Letterman we started getting 3 days after delayed telecast. So we had our own versions of Carson and Co. And they were successful in Australia. Whether they would have succeeded on the world stage, I'm not sure, but they were our guys. Although the number one talk show host in Australia happened to be an American as well. He was a guy from the Bronx called Don Lane, who somehow wrangled his way into this gig hosting our version of Carson. And and he was a really interesting character. He was kind of I think his background, he used to do Sinatra impressions in cab lounges and stuff. So he got lucky. Everyone loved him. He was an endearing guy, but he was certainly not at the level of the Cabots or the Carsons. But what interested us about him was his fascination with the paranormal.
Yeah.
He was someone who, on a Carson or any of those American shows, there's no way they would dedicate an hour or 90 minutes to the topic of the supernatural, but Don Lane did.
Yeah.
You know,
He had the Warrens on for a whole episode, didn't he?
He might have had them on for 2 nights in a row. Like, he was obsessed with that stuff. And a lot of that stuff, some of it you can find on YouTube, but we actually got access to, through one of the networks in Australia, to some of these episodes, and they're fascinating. And he does live crosses to, supposedly haunted houses, and the Warrens are there commentating on it. It's really interesting. So we grew up with that. That was our version of late night talk show, which was quite different from Carson, which was all,
Sure. But like Cole was saying before, we were obviously watching a lot of American movies and American TV, sitcoms and that sort of stuff, and dramas and procedurals. So, we're getting a lot of our pop culture from these shows and the vernacular. And, of course, Carson would appear in these shows in the background, or, somebody's watching Carson.
He's playing TV in a bar or whatever.
Yeah. So this it wasn't a world that was totally unfamiliar to us.
But it was exotic, though, because it was something we couldn't access at the time.
Yeah.
So it's only later in life that we've managed to dive into the archives and watch all those great episodes, and they're fucking brilliant. Those guys were so polished, they were just masterful. Don Lane, maybe not so much, but he was still an interesting character.
But whereas you have your Carsons of the world, if you had gotten Carson and that was what was bouncing around in your brain as you were writing this, I think Jack, the host Jack of Night Owls, would be a very different character.
Yes.
Don Lane had as you said, an interest in the supernatural, would have the Warrens on, not just for a segment, but for the whole time. And, Carson would just have the Warrens on, Hans Holzer on for like a beat for a segment.
Yeah.
But Don Lane's also an endearing guy. Like, there's something very
He wears his
affable and
heart on
likable.
his sleeve,
So talk about the connection between Don and now Jack, and why this horror host, or this late night host, had to be likable in order to kind of get to where we're going with him.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. It's funny because David really took to Don. It was we were a little bit apprehensive about showing him.
Weren't sure if we should share him with the rest of the world.
Right.
Yeah. But he was like, no, that's our guy.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And
he's much closer to.
Yeah.
And physically, there's a bit of a resemblance as well. Both tall, striking men. It was.
Yeah.
But go on.
No, you go.
I was just going to say Don had vulnerability, which you don't see so much with, maybe a bit with the Cabot, not so much with Carson. They would be self-deprecating when a joke bombed or whatever, but otherwise they were very polished and confident. Don, though, there was a vulnerability to him. I think that's why, as Australians, we like that sort of slightly underdog sort of character who's not quite got it together, but it's like, come on, you can do it. So
I think that vulnerability helps with that balance.
And it helps create a cinema-worthy character in Jack Delroy. So, and David was always going to bring that anyway, being who he is. But
David Dastmalchian is an actor that a lot of people have been talking about and noticing for a while. And obviously the guy shows up and does great work, and typically there's almost like this malevolence to him, even if he's not outright playing a malevolent guy. It feels like it's there.
Yes. Yeah.
With Jack, endearing, affable, definitely a careerist kind of guy that covers that's kind of masking this little bit of a darkness with him.
Yeah.
I watched this film. I was really impressed by the range of David that I feel like we all know is there.
Yeah.
But really haven't been able to see it because he hasn't had this leading man kind of role yet. Were you? Did he show up baked in with Don or with Jack, or how much of it was directing and pulling that range out of him?
He came with a very fully formed character, and
once he got in the beige suit, he became Jack.
Yeah.
Our job was to kind of just let him be.
No, don't get in the way. Don't get in the way of greatness. And I think that's an issue. With directing, sometimes you really need to be hands-on and shape and find a way to get what you want. But he was just such the right choice that it didn't really need anything.
The safest hands possible.
Yeah,
really.
Yeah.
And it was just after every take we were just our jaws were on the floor.
We'd walk out. That was amazing. He said, "I can go again. I can try this one." Yeah, let's try that. It was just every take was, and not just that. The whole crew. There were certain scenes where we'd call cut and everyone would just be standing there. There's a scene in the film where that happens after the big things go down with Lily. And it was like that. We just spellbound. Wow, amazing.
Well, talk a little bit about the actress that plays Lily, because she's innocent, and then there is, I don't know, I don't have kids. Kids can be kind of creepy anyhow for me, but like, there is that creepiness that she shows up with, but also this innocence due to her upbringing in this cult. But like, talk about the performance that she delivers and the physicality that was involved in getting her there.
Wow. Look, I think, with all the cast, like the costuming is so good. I think it's so character specific, period specific, but right for the character. So that putting her in that little tunic and with
pinafore.
Like who was the little one in Brady Bunch, the youngest?
Was that
anyway?
Jan or Marsha? I think
maybe Jan. It was a
Marsha?
name. Marsha was the other. Anyway, it would just evoke that sweet, innocent, wholesome sort of family vibe. But then, of course, she had it in her head. She had her own version of events that had transpired before the night, and we didn't get in the way. We sort of gave her some options, and I don't want to say too much because but we sort of gave her, she could be this, or it could be that she has no control, or she's totally in control. You decide. You don't have to tell us. So once she had that, I think was given that kind of leeway, that freedom, she just made her choice and went for it. And again, with her, it was just tweaking. It's like a bit too much looking at the camera now, or now's the time to look at the camera, or even sweeter if we can. It's like because once she'd done that glare and that stare into camera, it didn't matter. I think you knew there was something amiss, so it didn't matter how delightful and sweet she was or how innocent seeming. It just worked. The menace was there.
Well, in this world is you have David's Jack and Delroy, and you have these other characters that are sitting on the couch with them, and all of them feel very much like they are of that era of that talk show. A psychic. You have almost a reformed magician, James Randi-esque character, except I think maybe even douchier than even Randy ever was.
Sure.
Don and Randy had their a whole fallout, right? On screen or on the episode.
Spoons went flying.
Yeah. I was just kind of curious about some of the actors that you brought in for this, where there's already a literacy about these kinds of characters that they were coming to portray.
Yeah. I think. Well, you go and you speak.
No, well, the sidekick Reese. Gus, the character's name. Reese, he was just a real discovery. He'd never done anything on screen before. But first of all, he kind of just looked like that guy. He looked like he'd walked off a De Palma film or something. He's got that sort of Dennis Franzi sort of quality or something, real classic character actor vibe. So first of all, he just looked right. And we thought, well, he's worth a shot. Because we'd seen him, I think he had a comedy show on at the Comedy Festival in Melbourne, and maybe a few people we knew of, comedian friends, had spoken highly of him.
As an improviser.
So we thought, why not? We'll give him a shot. And then he just blew us away, He just had the voice and he had the look and he could play that sort of downtrodden, vulnerability really well. And
he'd watched a lot of Larry Sanders, which helped.
Okay, there you go.
But there was a bit of Hank in that character. I think at the end of the day, he's less douchey than Hank, but but they all got the world. Like with Ian Bliss, who plays the Randy character, he'd seen all the same stuff. He knew James Randi. He knew the infamous, Don Lane episode where he walks off his own show. So it was an easy sell. And same goes for Laura Gordon, who plays Dr. June. These are just smart, savvy, pop culture savvy people. We were just very fortunate.
Yeah, the frame of reference is there. It's really easy.
I just have to credit you on these character names because they all feel like people like June Ross Mitchell. That sounds like a parapsychologist. Carmichael Haig. That sounds like a magician turned skeptic. Like
it's
Chris
probably not his original name.
It's but like all of these things kind of work.
70s names.
Like
a Joyce Brothers. Or I don't know.
Yes. Well, in addition to all of the supernatural as well as the David kind of driven stuff, the set really is a character in this, and this whole vibe. I've read a little bit about how you brought this to life, but you're using 3 cameras rolling all at once, and you're using cranes. Like talk about the evoking it while still using modern technology.
Yes. I mean, we early in the process we dreamed of shooting it on old school 70s tube cameras, but you'd be lucky, hard pressed to find 3 that worked in Melbourne from the same brand. So that was never going to work. And even if it did, one of them would have broken down day 2.
Yeah. And from a post-production point of view, it would just have been a nightmare for visual effects.
So that was our one concession to modern technology, was to use some reasonably decent state-of-the-art cameras. But the rest of it, like even the lights, it was all period stuff.
Yeah.
Our cinematographer tracked down the one warehouse in Melbourne that still held those lights.
I was going to say those, is it a tungsten or what?
Tungsten,
it's like so harsh, so hot.
Yeah.
And as the tension is ramping up in the film amongst the characters, they're sweating, and I'm like, I don't know, under those lamps.
That's the lamps.
That's probably not an effect. That's not makeup. They're actually sweating.
Very rarely did we have to get the spray bottle out. It was,
no, that's right.
It was just the tungsten lights. Yeah.
Well, even as Jack is throwing the commercial, which, I mean, that's a whole other thing. Everything, you've just witnessed, we're going to bring out the devil. But first, a word, and then we have the graphics on the commercial, the little bumpers and everything. Was there anyone that was working on the crew in production design or anything that actually came from that world of TV in the 70s?
Yes.
Well, our production designer, Otello Stolfo, designed sets for music variety shows. We had a huge show in the 70s. Any kid who grew up in the 70s and 80s would remember Countdown. And he designed the sets for that and game shows, and then he did dramas and everything. But he was very well versed in that world. And
it was like, here's the brief, and he said, leave it with me.
Yeah. It's not like we had to offer him the colour palette or anything like that. He just came back with that shit rainbow, as we call it, and it was like that's it.
Not gonna mess with that.
Yeah, shit rainbow. That's the least popular bag of Skittles right there. And we have in the it's not really giving anything away. In the first couple of minutes of the film, we're getting excellent narration by Michael Ironside,
legend,
and learning about this world, learning about Jack, learning about sort of his occult proclivities or dalliances, it would seem.
Yes.
Did you build out a lot of kind of occult backgrounds? Did you script out like a Bible, as it were, of this stuff?
We were just too busy trying to make the script work. Yeah. But we did a lot of research. We did all the reading, and we watched lots of old stuff. The Anton LaVey's.
Right.
And, I guess our Diabo is modelled a little
very
bit
much,
perhaps a slightly more malevolent.
Yeah.
LaVey.
Yeah.
But we did, and
what LaVey probably wished he could have done.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. We did, but we did immerse ourselves in a lot of that stuff. But then it's like you just cherry pick the bits that you think work for the world you're trying to create. Yeah. Like there's obviously something like the Bohemian Grove, but I don't know that they are as sinister as we, as our version. I don't know. Maybe it's all harmless fun. But but it is what works for the story you're telling. So you kind of create your own lore, or enough of the clues of what that lore might be.
There's with the character of June, the parapsychologist. Her book. I forget the title of the book. It's Conversations with the Devil. Yeah.
With the Devil.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but it looks like the typeface on that book cover is very much styled after Michelle Remembers, which is the book that launched the Satanic Panic, really, or heavily influenced it.
Yeah, we read that, and or I read it for the team. But that was definitely an influence on I guess on Lily's background, and her being captive to this cult. Yeah.
Why do you think that we have films like The Conjuring that are set in the 70s and supposedly based on it? Well, I mean, based on a true case.
Yes.
And this, why do you think there is this fascination with the 70s itself and the horrors, supernatural horrors of it? I think things like the Satanic Panic and fascination with the occult plays into it, but
for sure.
What else?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess that period, it's pre-internet and things just feel, I don't know. There's a certain naivete about audiences at that time, and I think we're playing into that a little bit.
Naivety and an openness to the possibility of there being more than this physical reality before us. So, I mean, there's obviously a great era for movies in general, but for horror in particular, it was a golden age. So that kind of lent itself, like they're the films we love, and like wouldn't it be cool to create something of that era as well and evoke some of those memories of that that period in the films.
I mean, there was a time of a lot of divisiveness as well. In the United States, culturally, you've got, in the lead up to and post Vietnam War, you have Watergate, which you guys kind of reference in the film, and there was a 1966 Time cover of "Is God Dead?" People just seem to not have faith in the institutions, their societal institutions, and then maybe not in higher powers either.
Yeah.
Is that something that
it probably was? I mean, I think that all fed into it, that period of, like, we say, Michael Ironside says in those opening lines, it's a time of unrest and mistrust, and I think we're obviously as Australians quite removed from that, but that's kind of how we do see America then. And maybe a little bit now.
I was going to say, was the parallel to perhaps 2024 or 2020 to 2024?
Look, I've got to say, that script, that bit of narration has changed right up until we went into the booth to record Michael. So I dare say the current sort of situation fed into that, because it was something different earlier. I mean, at the time, that was the period of the age of paranoid thrillers as well. Mm-hmm. And people had good reason, I think, then to be a bit paranoid about this, about systems and institutions, and so there's an overall questioning of things, and so people were looking for answers, and the New Age movement, I guess, was starting then as well. Mm-hmm. But there was all the rise of all those, there's Jonestown and all those cults that were happening. It was a pretty crazy time. Maybe we're a bit immune to some of that now, but it just felt like the right time. Also, the music. Let's not forget that was like a great musical era as well. And the idea of being able to make a horror film that has a jazz band in it, that really appealed to us as well.
We talk a little bit about that, the band that you have in there, and also the studio audience. Like, where'd you pull these people from? Who are they? Were they watching the production? Did they know that they were in the midst of a film? What was going on here?
We just yanked them off the street. Put a pair of flares on.
It feels like they could be.
For sure. I mean, they were all extras. There was lots of friends and family in there as well.
Low budget. So.
But look, we only had the audience for a day, so we had to make the most of them, and
we worked them hard.
We worked them very hard. I mean, it's a big part of the film, and we didn't kind of really realise that until we were in post, and. I guess we'd written in these reactions, like, the crowd boo or the crowd scream, but it's not until you're sort of putting it all together, because we didn't really have all the pieces at that point, we had to record a loop group and really build up that audience atmosphere. So,
but you take them out, you take one or two laughs or guffaws or out of the film, it suddenly kind of doesn't work. It's so vital to the story.
And amidst there's an increasing threat from supernatural forces. This is still a talk show, and then as I'm watching it, I'm like, it's easy to get lost in the notion that you are watching tape from 40, 50 years ago, and then these jokes that I'm like, that seems like a Carter joke, and I think there was one about, was it Bellwyn, Illinois, or Berwyn, Illinois? That's I think, if I recall, that's a Svengoolie gag, too.
That's a David
he snuck that in there. He snuck in a Joe Bob Briggs line as well. So,
Did you have, like, a writer's room?
No, it was us. I mean, for the monologue, we consulted a comedian friend of ours. Just to sort of maybe shape a couple of the jokes, but we started out with a whole lot more jokes.
It was pages and pages of
bad jokes, Which speaks to the quality of the film.
Absolutely.
The jokes are bad.
We had, intentionally very poor. No, look, I mean, what ended up, we've got the Billy Carter and Reggie Jackson, and there were more. And David and Reese, who plays Gus, did ad-lib a bunch as well. Very period-specific gags. Some they were just a bit blue for night owls.
It comes across. It just Reese and David together look like they would be a host and sidekick somehow.
They should have a show.
Well, who knows? Maybe there's more from the world of Jack Delroy. Another very special episode. Lost in there somewhere. Colin, Cameron, thank you guys so much for joining me. I know we're going to head into a big theater at the Chinese Theater. Have you been here before? The Chinese Theater?
Well, we just sat in in and looked at a tech check. And
Yes,
wow,
looks and
it
sounds
sounds fantastic.
That's cool. This is a big place to show off your goods, right?
It's pretty a little daunting. We're a bit nervous, but mostly just really excited.
All right, well, we're rolling right into it, and
Cool.
I think it'll be good.
Great.
All right.
Nice to
All right.
chat.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Pleasure.
Cool, man.
Thank you.
You get out there, Mr. Midnight, and you knock him dead.